ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Mr. Chairman, Brother Nazi Saleh, distinguished leaders of NGO, ICDC, the ladies and gentlemen. Alhamdulillah, first of all, thank you very much to the organizers for inviting me to address such a distinguished gathering of participants at this very important international seminar. Now, the theme of the seminar is to develop education and for purposes of education and economic development of particularly Muslim Ummah in Cambodia. The focus of my presentation as given by the organizers was on developing education, especially educational Waqf institution. But I am going to expand the subject of Waqf. I'm not only going to talk about Waqf in relation to education. It is important. And there are many examples of highly successful educational institutions throughout the world, Muslim world, funded and supported by Waqf. Very important. We must do this. And Waqf for education must also be established in Cambodia as it is being done throughout the Muslim world. I'm told today in Turkey there are about 60 universities established as Waqf Foundation. And there are many more also in Indonesia, about 20. And there is clear historical evidence about a combination, how the combination between Waqf and educational institution help develop the Muslim Ummah, help establish the Islamic civilization throughout the world. The best known today is Al-Azhar University in Cairo. More than 700 years, 800 years ago, the founders of Al-Azhar endowed into Waqf extensive land in the city of Cairo. And as such, they were able to generate funds, cash, wealth to support the university. And not only to support the university, there were occasions when the Al-Azhar Waqf body was also mobilized to support Fi Sabilillah agenda of the Muslims under the foundation. It may be of interest to you to know that these foundations established by universities actually had their roots in the Islamic Waqf. The foundations established to support universities in the West, including Harvard, Oxford, and in Stanford, and so on. They're all highly high net worth foundation. They had their roots. They learned when they first established their foundation. They learned from, then they benefited largely from the example provided by Islam through Waqf. And this started in 1267. The first foundation established for university was established in UK, Oxford University's Merton College. And they had their headquarters at the Masjid Al-Aqsa. And some academics in Europe have traced the roots of this foundation behind Merton College. They translated the charter of the foundation, and they find that it is exactly almost word by word a translation of an Arabic charter of a Waqf for education in Palestine during that time. And that was before Salahuddin al-Ayyubi conquered Jerusalem. And which means, if you see today throughout the world, highly successful universities, well-endowed, very rich, self-sufficient, self-financed, they had their roots in Waqf, established by Muslims in Palestine before 1267 and so on, before Salahuddin al-Ayyubi was able to conquer Jerusalem. Today, therefore, it is obvious. If you look at these endowments that fund Harvard, Oxford, Stanford University, among the leading universities in the world, they manage their foundations just like a corporation does its assets. Meaning they have professional managers of Waqf funds who knows business, who knows how to invest, who knows the corporate ways of enhancing value, and hence they are closely related to the corporate sector. Therefore, what I'm going to do this morning is to share with you an experience that I had in establishing what I call corporate Waqf. You may not have heard of this concept before, because just perhaps like in Malaysia. In Malaysia, when you talk about Waqf, Malaysians, generally Muslims also included, will always relate Waqf to only cemetery, mosques, madrasas, orphanages. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. We must do more of that. But if you look at the history of Waqf, you realize, as I mentioned earlier, the link is so great also to business, corporations, and so on and so forth. And it is very important. So the main message that I want to deliver this morning is, it's good if you have the intention and plan to establish a Waqf for education. Later on to fund universities, colleges, madrasas, and so on. But you must establish them as a wealth-generating endowment. That means it must be related to businesses and investments. And if you do that, then you need to redefine yourself. You are no more the conventional, traditional Waqf. You become a corporate, business-driven Waqf. And I called it corporate Waqf. And this is what I would like to share with you. It's not just a theory, it's not just a slogan. Alhamdulillah, I had the privilege of associating myself with 2 corporate Waqfs established in Malaysia. Yeah? Now, so my subject this morning will therefore be actually corporate Waqf, an institution for economic and social development of Muslim minority groups. What does this mean, this title? It means I'm looking at Waqf first, not only like the traditional Waqf, for charity, for helping the poor. That's good enough. That's good. For building mosques, for building madrasas and orphanages and cemeteries, graveyards, and so on. That is needed. But there is a strong potential for Waqf, particularly for minority Muslim communities, like you, the Muslims in Cambodia. I've delivered the same message to minority Muslim communities in New Zealand, in Australia, and they're all, South Africa as well. They are all interested in looking at it closely, because minority Muslim communities usually do not have the advantage that, for example, Malaysian Muslims have, the advantage of a government support. You don't have that kind of support. And hence, in Malaysia, you have many government policies that support Muslim causes. They even build mosques and so on and so forth. Here it's going to be very challenging, more challenging for you. And how do you therefore survive, and not only survive, thrive, and more important, as mentioned this morning in the opening remarks by Her Excellency, how Muslim communities can enhance their economic position so that you can contribute to the economic development of Cambodia, prosper the country, along at the same time that we prosper ourselves. We are not meant to be just exclusive and looking after Muslim community as such. Just like in Malaysia too, Muslims must learn to go into business, go into the corporate sector, control some strategic businesses and so on, not because they want the benefit for themselves. It's because they have a duty to contribute to the development of the country to benefit of everyone else. As we will recall, Islam is not just meant for the Muslims. We are here to prosper mankind, to civilize mankind based on the fundamentals Islam, based on the Islamic way of life. That means we have a responsibility to also benefit everyone else in whatever we do, more so in business and in the corporate sector. So corporate Waqf is a kind of a renewal for the Waqf institution. It's an institutional revival. As I said earlier, for too long it has been related only to building mosques, cemetery, and so on. Nothing wrong with that, as I said. We must do more. But Waqf has the potential to do much, much more beyond what is purely religious. Beyond. It can enhance our economic position, particularly when we want to compete with the others. It can enhance our capability to contribute to the economic development of countries like Cambodia and help others as we help ourselves. It will definitely offer an opportunity for us to be self-dependent, self-reliant, to be independent economically. Many Muslims throughout the world, including in Malaysia, many Muslims in Malaysia forget that business is one of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam sunnah before he became a Rasul. One of the sunnahs. And Islam clearly says 9/10 of livelihood come from business. Unfortunately, many of us shy away from business. Why? Perhaps because many of us think that business is this worldly, dunyawi, too materialistic. You become materialistic. You become highly individualistic. That is if you follow exactly the business ways that is practiced throughout the world today. Introduced particularly by the West, by capitalism. So Muslims therefore need to do it differently. We need to redefine business, find a new way of doing things based on the Islamic principles, upholding Islamic justice, prospering the ummah and prospering everyone else together. Yet at the same time, try to prevent the problems caused by global capitalism today. What are among the problems? The rich gets too much richer faster, and nobody cares about the poor. So when you talk about our role as Muslim businessmen and corporate executive, that is our fundamental role. We therefore need to redefine the way we organize ourselves, how we structure our corporations, our businesses, how we train our entrepreneurs. Their mindset cannot be just to make money, and buy cars and houses and so on. Nothing wrong with that. Islam is not against that. But don't forget, we also have a role, we have a duty to make sure that that wealth is used to benefit all of us, the rest. Not only us, humanity. The whole country, Cambodia, must grow later on with our effort. So here, therefore, in this delivery this morning, I'm going to try to, using the English expression, I'm going to kill two birds with one stone. First, educational Waqf, but this is less important to me this morning. You all know already about educational Waqf. My real focus is through corporate Waqf, how to bridge social and economic divides. Through corporate Waqf, how to bridge social and economic divide. Because today the whole world is looking for an answer. And for the moment, we can't find it. The whole world. The rich is getting richer, poor is getting poorer, nobody cares about the poor. This is not only happening in Muslim countries, it's happening in the West. The Americans are not comfortable. The Europeans, the Japanese, the Koreans, they do not like this. Yet, for the moment, they only have that model, the Western model. And Malaysia is also, including Indonesia and Muslim countries, Turkey, the Arab countries and so on, we are all jumping on this Western bandwagon, on the capitalist bandwagon. And if they are suffering from the problem of the rich getting richer, poor, nobody cares, we are all Muslim countries, Muslim nations suffering from the same problem. And that's why perhaps one of the reasons why there is always conflict among Muslims today. Worse than in the West. Because in the West, they introduced that concept, they're comfortable with it. Among Muslims, we adopted some of these concepts from the West, capitalism and so on, without, just simply blindly, without adjusting it to our way of life, our concepts of adil, social justice, social and economic justice, and hence, perhaps, resulting in Muslims themselves having problems. And the other problem is, most Muslims today, because many of us, particularly the young generation, are not looking at business. Because we regard generally in our mindset, business is, as I said, this worldly, materialistic. And because of that, students and teachers, even ulamas, even sometimes discourage people from going into business because they, because of the fear that they will become greedy, just like anyone else throughout the world. Materialistic, this worldly. But that is a very costly thing to do. And this is happening also in Malaysia. It may happen. It's happening also throughout the world. Malaysia's economic development, for example, I'm just going to show you a cartoon, adaptation of a cartoon published by one of Malaysia's leading cartoonists. He depicts here, you can see there, a picture of a phenomenon in Malaysia. Fast developing. Cambodia is also the same. Fast developing, you see buildings coming up, industries, foreign investments, and so on and so forth. The question there is, what are the impacts on Muslims in Malaysia? I'm talking about Malaysia here. What are the impact? What is the impact of all this on Malaysia? Where are the Malays and Muslims? These cartoonists actually do not show where it is for the moment. You don't see it. But actually it is there. And he placed the Malays and Muslims there. Just. And look what happened to these Malays. That means they are beginning to lose their identity. The country is no more like a Muslim country. Those of you who have been to Kuala Lumpur will, I mean, you see mosques and this and that, but generally, wealth is in the hands of the non-Muslims. Muslims account for 60% of the Malaysian population, but they control less than 30% of the economy. And it's going only to get worse and worse and worse, because rich can easily get richer under the current system. And worse, look what happened to that Malay house. That's the typical Malay house. Boom. And what is the source of that problem? Business and corporate power not owned or held by Muslims. Because many of us shy away from businesses. Even the good people. And when the good people shy away from business, it's only the bad Muslims who go into business. And they become more greedy. And they become worse. And so there is a dilemma. And there is nothing, and Malaysia is talking about transforming this economic system. But for the moment, I don't see any concrete agenda to do that. And that's why my colleagues and I in the Islamic Chamber of Commerce are trying to change the situation, to introduce, so that the government also change their perspective. Now, ladies and gentlemen, talking about Muslim poverty and us being, so far behind, poor largely and so on. I think, are you familiar with the story of between the hare and the tortoise? I'm sure. If not all, some of you, I'm sure. It is so obvious. If you between the tortoise and the hare, you think which one is perhaps best represent Muslims today throughout the world? Tortoise, I think. Agreed? That's why. Why? Because tortoise is green, and Muslims, we identify more with green. But also because the hare usually it's got pink ears. I don't see anybody with pink ears in this room. Yeah? The hare or the rabbit became complacent and falls asleep. That is the story. Yeah? So the question that we need to ask ourselves as Muslims throughout the world is, the strategies in order to beat the rabbit if they move fast. Some say, look, find a river so that you can swim, the rabbit cannot swim, but you have to find a river. But in Malaysia, there is the thinking. There is the thinking. Perhaps one good strategy is this. This was taken from an advertisement in one of the commercial ads. Meaning, maybe the tortoise, Muslim tortoise, the Malay tortoise in Malaysia started to think, why am I running so slowly compared with the rabbit? Maybe it's because my skin is so thick, is so heavy. What if I were to throw away, which say that, jangan jadi in Malay, jangan jadi seperti kacang, lupakan kulit. Don't become like a bean that forgets its shell. That is heavy, but that is the one that gives you the identity as a Muslim. So the message here, what I'm saying is, in our rush to win in competing for identity, some even say Islam is the one that is dragging us behind. Some will say, oh, we carry too much, baggage and so on. You cannot do this, you cannot do that. Neither is it a lizard, nor is it a rat. You don't know what kind of animal you are. Perhaps that is what's happening to most Muslim people today. We must look at another strategy. This is not the best strategy, ladies and gentlemen. How to win in competing with the West, with everyone else. And this is where I would like to share with you. How can we win? Yes, we can. How? Look, understand, learn from nature, from fitrah, how long can the rabbit live in our next generation? But we will always be poor for as long as we are selfish. We're only thinking about ourselves and not our children and grandchildren. So longevity is the best strategy. Build lasting, sustainable organizations. How did the West, the Japanese, the Koreans, the Chinese today in China become so powerful economically, so advanced, so fast? Look at China, so fast. From a poor country to number 2 in the world in economic system. It's because they focus on institutions suited to their culture and background. So therefore, for Muslims, and I'm saying here also, in Malaysia it's the same. We are behind, we're like a tortoise, we're being thrown out. We only control less than 30% of the economy, and others are growing faster. Multinational corporations are coming to Malaysia, to Cambodia. They are going to be richer and richer, bigger and bigger. How to defend our interests? Organizations. And ladies and gentlemen, for us Muslims, you can easily trace this call for building organizations and institutions to Islam from Al-Quran. Al-Quran said, Bunyanun marsus. Surah As-Saf, 4th ayah. And here I have the translation. Verily Allah loves those who fight in His cause, jihad. And here I'm also saying that business can be a form of jihad under today's circumstances. Business jihad. Verily Allah loves those who fight in His cause in rows, ranks, as if they were a solid structure. The Quran already said it. You want to win in the struggle for fisabilillah, for jihad, either in war or in peace, in business, economy. Build organizations. As